We're here with you, and a digital exclusive. Boston has entered the chat here, coming to you on Nesson with Keegan. I'm Adam, and most importantly, Sean Grande joining us from the Garden, getting set for Boston against Brooklyn. It should be a massacre. It's a 17.5-point spread. Sean, I mean, Boston should have its way with the Nets. That being said, we realize the Nets did beat them once, took them to double overtime a second time earlier this year, but that's not where I want to start. For all future interviews, until it no longer applies, I'm going to begin with this. Why isn't Jayson Tatum playing tonight?
Well, maybe it's like Jeremy Swayman. He needs to reacclimate himself, right, to the environment after a two-week Italian vacation. I say Tatum at least is coming off a major injury. I don't know what, 2 weeks in the Italian Alps on vacation. I don't know what you have to acclimate from, but I've never been on a 2-week vacation to the Italian Alps, so I probably shouldn't talk. I tweeted this yesterday. I said, I don't know when is it now news when Jayson Tatum is still out on the injury report. Listen, this is becoming a complicated question, and I'm going to put it this way. Jayson Tatum has been saying and implying, and his people have been saying and implying and leaking that he doesn't want to come back until he is 100% Jayson Tatum. Well, if that's the case, he's never coming back, because here's the point. He's not going to be 100% Jayson Tatum until he is out there at 70%, 80%, then 90%. This is the last part of the rehab, is these 10, 15, 20 games, whatever it takes for him to get to 100%. So my information is that he's sort of physically ready to go. Now it's a matter of picking spots and planning it out. And I don't think it's going to be many of these conversations where is tonight the night? No, I think it's coming, and it's coming pretty soon, but obviously it's not tonight.
I love that you brought that up, because we know, like you said, 70, 80, 90, you need to hit those before you hit 100%. It's never going to happen this season, so we know that. Are the Celtics pushing him to come back? Are they saying, hey, you're ready and we think you're ready to go? Or is it just whenever you're ready, you let us know and we'll slide you into the lineup?
Yeah, it's much more the latter. And they're certainly not forcing him back, and I can promise you beyond any shadow of a doubt, the game being on NBC Sunday night has nothing to do with when he may or may not play. Everybody's got to feel comfortable with the whole thing. And there's been a few good questions asked, like, is there a drop-dead date as we move not towards – there's no urgency now, but urgency isn't that long of an Uber ride from now, right? We're a couple of weeks away from it. There's an opportunity here with some home games and, the road schedule. When this little home stretch is over, the Celtics have a 3-game road trip at Cleveland, at Oklahoma City, at San Antonio. So it's a wild, it's a wild sequence for the Celtics coming up here. So you want to get Jayson Tatum back. You want to get him back in these home games. If let's say Jayson Tatum comes back and it doesn't work, at least you tried it. So I think the day's gone.
The national conversation, even local, as I don't need to tell you, obviously, has revolved around, okay, when he comes back, because people aren't doing the if anymore, when he comes back, what does it look like? Sprinkling a guy who is coming off this injury, doesn't really know his body, how it's going to react, obviously, to being out there in real NBA competition, games that matter at this stage of the year, obviously. No training camp run-up, no preseason games. How do you sprinkle him in? Is he starting? Is he coming off the bench? Is it his team again? Is it still Jalen's team? People are already trying to kind of, just pit those storylines against one another. What I'm wondering, with all the people that you talk to within the Celtics organization, are any of them internally worried about what it looks like in terms of the fit with this unknown version of Jayson Tatum and this MVP caliber Jaylen Brown?
I wouldn't use the term worried, but I would say everybody has certainly discussed it internally. You've been discussing it for months, how it was going to work and where does he fit in. And the big thing we don't know, which is what is the minute restriction exactly? And then the secondary question is, who do you want him to play with? I think we've probably learned now, at least Joe Mazzulla's tried to educate everybody, that it doesn't matter who starts and who comes off the bench. It's how many minutes do you have Jayson Tatum? Who do you want him playing with? The discussion here, if we weren't all poised and looking away from what the Celtics have accomplished on the floor, who is actually playing, and been fascinated and fixated by the Tatum return. And by the way, the most important game, although everybody wants to break the story, isn't Jayson's first game. It's his second game and his third game and his fourth game and how he responds. But we'd be talking about things like Vucevic. Where does he fit in? Who does he play best with? Why Peyton Pritchard, who was having a year as a starter, is suddenly coming off the bench and playing very well, because it's about the combinations. And once you get your 20 minutes, once Joe Mazzulla's handed Jayson Tatum's 20 minutes, then He's got to figure out on the first night and then the second night and then the third night who he wants him to play with. And that will determine things like starting and coming off the bench is far less important than who he's going to play with.
You kind of touched on it, on the players that it might impact, but I do want to know, just in the weeds, whether it's positively or negatively, once he does return, who's going to be impacted the most? Because there are some young wings that have had tremendous contributions in his absence, and you have to think if he's coming into the lineup, somebody's going to have to be phased out, or their minutes are going to be phased down. It's going to impact them on the court.
Everybody's going to slide down one chair, right? I mean, whether it's Baylor Scheinman, whether it's Sam Hauser, whether it's Jordan Walsh, whether it's Hugo Gonzalez, everybody will slide down. But again, that's the question that all the talking heads like you guys will be discussing. Is 70% of Jayson Tatum better than 100% of whoever will be playing in those minutes? And then the discussion goes back to the bigger picture of all, which is the reason I've been pushing the Jayson Tatum return and why I think it's important all along, which is that what this Celtics team has done so magnificently is create angst about this discussion, because they weren't supposed to be 18 games over 500 at this stage of the year. And suddenly you're in the 2 spot in the Eastern Conference, and you're worried about things like, is Jayson Tatum going to mess up the chemistry of the team? And think about how absurd that question was at the start of the year and over the summer. The number one priority for the organization is Jayson Tatum is at full health mentally and physically, certainly for training camp next year. And then as far as this house money year is concerned, you want to figure out what is a better scenario. 80% of Jayson Tatum, 100% of Baylor Scheinman, 100% of Hugo Gonzalez, and what's the best combination? And I'd also remind you guys, and I'm laughing because NBA TV picked up the game Monday in Milwaukee, and you're going to get a lot of Baylor Scheinman and Jordan Walsh and Hugo in that game. 5th game in 7 nights, brutal back-to-back. So even though we're talking about guys sliding over one chair, remember this brutal schedule over the final 25 games with very little time to breathe. Jayson Tatum's not going to play in back-to-back, so there's going to be plenty of opportunities for everybody else who has been playing to get their minutes.
I don't care who goes. Hugo stays. He stays in the lineup. He gets his minutes. He's made such an impact. So just shifting away from Jayson Tatum a little bit, I want to talk about the wings themselves, the younger guys that have really stepped up in his absence. The role that they play, how does that change not only with Jayson Tatum back in the lineup, but once the playoffs roll around?
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to, as a young player, when you're playing the 3rd game in 4 nights against a team that's also playing a 3rd game in 4 nights, you may not get the same priority on the scouting report that you will when you're playing Philadelphia in the first round of the playoffs and it's 5 games into a playoff series. You're going to be a lot more familiar. You're going to be on the scouting report. And what determines success in this league is when teams adjust to you, how quickly do you adjust to get to the next spot? I think everybody is super high on Hugo. I think one of the great unasked and certainly not unanswered questions of this Celtic season is how good Hugo has been that he hasn't gone down to Maine to play it all. And the fact that all these guys have been so integral to what this team has accomplished at 38-20 that they haven't spent time down with the Maine Celtics. So I'm with you on Hugo and him being indispensable, and all of these minutes have been extremely valuable. But I'm also of the opinion, again, going back to the bigger issue, that the 200 minutes of Jayson Tatum that I think we're going to get here over the final few weeks of the season, to me, is just as important as what we would normally consider to be the developmental minutes of Gonzalez and Walsh and Shireman and on down.
Sean, I'm just curious because you're a smart guy, and for a guy who's as busy as you are, you consume a lot of content. Is there a Jayson Tatum question in all of this that we, and not we, me, Keegan, we, everyone,
No one cares what we think.
that we're not asking, that we haven't addressed yet?
Well, I think that the question will probably be asked in the big picture when this is looked at is how was the whole thing handled, right, about the return. Celtics have been as an organization, I think we've been pretty secretive about the whole thing, releasing some things on social media, but then not answering certain questions. As Jaylen Brown is rightly celebrating this extraordinary year he has had, has he inadvertently put more pressure on the Jayson Tatum return by, the contrast to me? I've used this example quite a bit, but if you're old enough, and luckily, as my son often reminds me, I'm old enough to remember the Scottie Pippen years when Michael Jordan was playing baseball. And there was just one moment in that to me was an image that told you about how Scottie Pippen felt about the whole thing, which was in a national TV game when the return was imminent. There was a shot of Scottie Pippen on the bench, and he pointed down to the Jumpman logo on his sneakers, right? Pointed down to Jordan on his sneakers and said, "Come back. We need you." And to me, there has been not as much of that as probably there could have been over the course of this year. Maybe to not make Jayson feel more pressure about coming back. Who knows what it's about? But I think that the talking heads that you're talking about, all this external discussion, I'll put it this way. Whether or not it has merit, I don't think as an organization, probably enough has been done to quell it.
Sean Grande, the voice of the Celtics, again getting ready for CNET and eventually, maybe sooner than later, the return of Jayson Tatum. Sean, thank you so much. We look forward to chatting again.
All right, well, all three of us will go to the Italian Alps one day and see if we need to react.
Perfect.
Thanks, Sean.
That's great. Yeah, we'll need the couple of days off on the back end for sure. Remember, everyone, Boston has entered the chat. Comes your way Monday through Friday, 4 o'clock on NESN.